With Kargil captured by the enemy, the Indian side was in a very challenging position. The columns trying to push through to Skardu, currently at Parkata, suddenly found themselves cut off from behind. The line of communication had faltered. With Kargil taken, the defense positions at Dras were also surrounded, and now the town of Leh, which was considered safe so far due to many buffer towns in between, was also threatened. And while all this was happening, the garrison at Skardu, under Colonel Thapa, was still fighting off the enemy from taking Skardu, with limited and tired troops and dwindling resources. The situation for the Indian side in this region was grave. As anticipated, the attacks came in on the Indian troops between Kargil and Skardu. The sugar column, under Colonel S.P. Singh and Major Couch, was the first one to get ambushed. The column was like sitting ducks under the ferocious enemy attack. With the risk of getting completely annihilated, the column dispersed and retreated through alternate routes back towards Indian-controlled towns. With the sugar column gone, the only force remaining between Kargil and Skardu were the 600 men at Parkata. The force quickly got surrounded from all sides by the enemy and were attacked. This column suffered heavy losses in trying to fight back the enemy attack. Around 200 Indian lives were lost in this battle. With mounting losses, the column was ordered to retreat, and with Kargil already fallen to the enemy, they also had to take alternate routes to get back to safety in Srinagar. Out of the total of 600, only 150 reached back to safety at Sonmarg by June of 1948. The rest perished on the way. While the columns between Kargil and Skardu were under attack, the column at Dras was also surrounded. The enemy attacked Dras from two sides. The defense column had been holding strong and repelling attacks from May 10th to May 17th of 1948, but now reinforcements were needed to help the troops at Dras to defend that town. The Indian side sent in more troops to Sonmarg with the objective to attempt and break through Zojila Pass onto Dras. It was also crucial that Sonmarg not fall, because that was the only buffer town between the enemy and the base at Srinagar, the capital of the valley. So a lot of the troops sent to Sonmarg were used to strengthen the defense of that town. Fewer troops could be made available for reinforcing Dras. After a few days of halt, the enemy attacked Dras on May 22, 1948. The defenders at Dras suffered some losses, but were able to push back the attack coming from the enemy. The two platoons holding Dras, surrounded from all the sides, quickly started to lose hope of reinforcements coming from Srinagar. It is important to understand that the Indian forces were overstretched, with the war spreading out on the Jammu front as well, where the enemy was strongly attacking Indian positions. The Indian side had to optimize the deployment of their troops and air support in that area. The Indian reinforcements at Sonmarg tried to break through the enemy at the Zojila Pass, but were pushed back. With the unsuccessful relief attempt from the Indian side, the two platoons defending Dras lost all hope for reinforcements and were at risk of getting run over in the next attack from the enemy. So the officer in charge at Dras was ordered to break out of Dras to get to safety at Sonmarg. As ordered, the troops broke out of Dras base camp in the dark and made contact with Sonmarg on the other side of the enemy. Dras was also gone. The orders now for the Indian side were to hold their current positions and not let the enemy come any closer to Srinagar. In the month of June 1948, the enemy made 4 more attempts to further break into the Indian line of communication. On June 27th, the enemy ended up reaching 37 kilometers close to Srinagar. They were pushed back in all their attempts. On July 3rd, the enemy attacked Sonmarg with all its numbers and firepower. The attack was so ferocious that the Royal Indian Air Force had to come in and strike the enemy positions to push them back. The Indian posture now had shifted to defending its positions at Sonmarg till further troops and resources could be made available for the campaign. With this shift in posture, any plans of attacking Dras, Kargil, and further north were put on hold. With this change in stance, any possibility of relief or rescue for the brave garrison at Skardu also died. Colonel Thapa and his men had been holding off the enemy from taking Skardu against all odds for almost 7 months now. Most of the garrison was now limited to the Skardu fort, where they were running short of ammunition and supplies. The available Dakotas could not reach Skardu due to its high altitude. Only the Tempest fighters could reach there to drop off limited resources in a single sortie. The Indian side provided air support to the garrison by sending their Tempests to attack enemy positions on June 19th, 20th, and then again on June 28th of 1948. The Tempests airdropped supplies for the garrison during their sorties, but the air support was just a temporary measure to help the garrison and not a solution for their challenges. The garrison was running out of supplies, and the enemy attacks on them kept on increasing in frequency as well as in intensity. Because of the fact that point number 8853 was still under enemy control, the enemy could snipe and shell at Colonel Thapa's troops' positions at will, even inside Skardu fort. The Indian troops were not safe at any place in Skardu. The attrition caused by this dealt a major blow to the troops' morale. But Colonel Thapa and his men still kept fighting hard to repel all enemy attacks. The Tempests provided more airdrops, supplies and ammunition on July 8th, July 16th, 17th, and August 7, 1948. On July 8th, the last bag of rations was finished at Skardu. The Royal Indian Air Force was able to drop off 6 containers of rations, out of which only 4 could be recovered. 2 dropped in the river next to the fort outside the perimeter. The Tempest fighters did try to attack point number 8853, from where a lot of shelling and sniping at Indian positions was taking place, but they could only delay the inevitable, not relieve the garrison. With food shortages in the garrison, the men at Skardu fort were forced to ration their food and other essentials. By the end of July, the troops have come to feeding themselves with food meant for animals, and 90% of the troops were now sick. The death toll by the enemy sniping and shelling from point number 8853 into the fort kept mounting. Still somehow, the troops at Skardu were able to defend their posts. The siege continued. August 1948. It was clear that the troops now had reached a breaking point. By now, Colonel Thapa's gallant troops defending Skardu were reduced to eating 1 chapati a day, washed down with a cup of tea. But they still continued to fight back, and the siege continued. August 7th, Tempests attacking the enemy again created some excitement amongst the soldiers, but this was also short-lived, since these air attacks were not enough to change the status quo. 2 days later, on August 9th, the enemy attacked the fort using howitzer guns in their attempt to break in. The attack was again pushed back. The enemy attacked again the next day with the same result. The mortar fire resumed on August 12th. The shelling was followed by a determined assault from the enemy on the Skardu fort. The enemy's first wave carried them very close to the bunkers. The second wave of attack reached the bunkers, where savage hand-to-hand combat took place between the enemy and the Indian troops. The battle continued for hours, but the enemy was eventually pushed back yet again. During this fighting, the forward positions ran out of ammunition, and they had to get a box of ammunition from the fort reserves. This was the last box of ammunition. At the end of this assault, the Indian troops at Skardu had just 10 bullets left in their ammunition, not enough to even stop the enemy for 20 minutes. All hopes of reinforcements from Srinagar had been dead for quite some time. The end had come. The men at Skardu had fought like heroes, defending their positions for around 10 months. But now the time had come for them to meet their fate with calm resignation. On the morning of August 14th, 1948, Colonel Thapa, his 4 officers, and 35 troops surrendered to the enemy. The last message Colonel Thapa sent to Srinagar at 8 a.m. was, "Skardu capitulated that day." This was a high point for Pakistan in their campaign in the north. They had captured all major towns in North Kashmir and even threatened Srinagar from the north. Their next target now was Leh, a completely isolated town from the Indian positions.